The league's putting, it's almost like it's a strategic ploy to make guys go broke.
Bogues, NBA players with their money are complete morons for the most part. They're financially illiterate.
Tell us what you really think. Welcome to Rogue Bogues, another episode of the basketball series. A lot to get through as the Dallas game is going on right now between Minnesota, Game 3. We'll get to that a little bit later, but what's going on, Pro, over there?
Not much, Bogues. Just Dallas running shit, it seems like. So
They are. They're playing really well at the moment. But yeah, we'll get into that. We'll go through all the I guess we're going to go through the second round first, just cap all that off because we haven't touched all that. And not a whole lot of shockers, but we'll start with Cleveland-Boston. As expected for the most part, really. Like, it wasn't really a barnstorming series, kind of boring. Cleveland somehow did manage to whack Boston in Game 2 on their home floor, but beyond that, there was not a lot of life from Cleveland. Allen being out the whole series. Donovan Mitchell only played 3 games in the series. It was a pretty boring series. I didn't watch a lot of it. I watched glimpses of it while I was working out or doing things, but pretty kind of cruise control series for Boston for the most part. Beyond Game 2, Tatum 26 and 10 a night, Jaylen Brown 23 and 6, and then you got White, Holiday, Pritchard all averaging double digits, and then Cleveland you had Donovan Mitchell with 31 and 6. Mobley played very well in this series. I think Allen being out, they moved into the 5. He just looked much more natural and then created a bunch more cross matches and mismatches. He put up 21 and 9, his best performance of his young career in a playoff series, which was good to see. And then Garland stepped up a little bit with Mitchell out, but pretty predictable series, Pro.
yeah, for the most part. I mean, Boston sort of had it most of the way. I think Cleveland put up a couple of good fights out of the 5 games, but Mitchell hurt. They weren't really going to give him much, but they did without Allen, and then Mitchell hurt. It's sort of behind the 8 ball on that. And, Boston played well, although they mailed it in at least one game in the series. They've been doing that for the last 5 years or so. So it seems like every one game of every series, if not multiple games, they just don't come. They don't come and show up, and another team jams it down their throat. So, but 4-1, not much of a series. Like I said, Mitchell hurt and Allen hurt, and Cleveland just didn't have enough off the bench, not enough firepower, just didn't have enough weapons to stay with it.
And that costs JB Bickerstaff his job. He gets done. Probably not great exit interviews for him. It's kind of a strange one because I wouldn't say they were bad this season, but I wouldn't say they were great. But in an East that's probably not overly loaded, GM and front office probably thought that they could do better, or they've got someone in the works. There's some floated names already, which I'm sure you want to touch on, Pro.
Yeah. So I don't know, Bogues. Like, as far as the firing goes, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, he did really bring them. He really did a good job for them. It just seems like Bickerstaff's always in the wrong place at the wrong time. He takes over from McHale in Houston, does an all right job, doesn't keep it there. Then he goes to, Memphis, gets fired after a year. And then, he comes there and it's just sort of steady improvement, right? the Beeline was a joke, 14 and 40. He cleaned that up, and then he goes 22 wins, 44 wins, 51 wins, and 48 wins. So, really just, really a shocker there. Bogues, have you ever been around that situation with a coach getting fired but really didn't deserve to get fired? It just seems like a weird deal. I've never really been around that.
Not really. I mean, Stotts, we weren't very good our second year. There was a lot of discontent in the locker room, so he kind of lost the locker room to an extent. It was kind of split, and management didn't like that. Not really. I mean, I haven't. Right. Maybe Mark Jackson. I guess you could technically bring that up because we were winning. We did have we had a good 2-year run, second round, first year, and then first round, second year in a 7-game series to the Clippers, and he got fired. So people do argue that one, but there was a lot more going on that people even realize around that. Mark did good things, but there was also a lot of a lot of kind of division around that place with the way he went about things, which was interesting. So, but yeah, not to that extent. But some of the names, Kenny Atkinson's rumored to be the favorite, but Johnny Bryant is the other one from the New York Knicks, and he was actually a redshirt. He was a redshirt at the University of Utah when I was there, bro. So
really,
he was a redshirt my second year with the University of Utah, and then went on to be. I think he played a couple of years there after I left, so I know him pretty well, and he's really grinded his way up into that role because he came out of nowhere, grinded up. I think with the Utah Jazz first. Just networking from being at the University of Utah and has done pretty good things.
And he's Donovan Mitchell's guy, so I think that's sort of where the link is. I've heard from my people that it's Kenny Atkinson's job, but they haven't announced it yet. But that's sort of where they're figuring to. It's just weird. It's just a strange deal. There's rumors about Mitchell saying that he doesn't think that. He didn't think that Bickerstaff was the coach sort of to take him to the next level. And, it's hard because he was hurt a lot. It's hard if that was true. I mean, what if JV Bickerstaff says, well, I don't think Donovan Mitchell was going to be healthy enough for me to bring him to the next level. Like it's sort of a weird dynamic. And then Kenny Atkinson, he got fired abruptly from Brooklyn because of those guys like, Kyrie, Durant, not really liking what he was doing there. So, it's interesting. Atkinson worked his way up, longtime coach, assistant with the Knicks, Golden State now. He's been in Atlanta. Did a very good job. I thought he did a solid job in Brooklyn, and it's it's a weird deal because they don't know if they're going to re-sign Mitchell, if that's going to happen, or they're going to force a trade. And then also, what are you going to do? So I think the Johnny Bryant thing is to sort of link Mitchell to try to stay. I don't think Mitchell's a good enough player to hire his guy to be his coach. Although, Johnny Bryant is a good coach. He's a solid guy. If you're going to hire Bryant because you think he could coach, great. If you're going to hire Bryant because you think he could just sort of keep Mitchell there, again, I don't think Mitchell's an elite franchise player like that where you're going to hire his guy just to keep him in town. I'm sort of against that. I'd rather make other moves to do otherwise. But so I think it's going to be Atkinson's job, Bogues.
100% agree with that too. Like that's an absolute suicide hiring if you're going to hire someone based on one of your max guys being happy that's probably going to leave anyway or wants to leave, or there's rumors that he's not happy there anyway.
If it's Luka's guy, if it's
different story.
If it's Luka's guy,
long-term,
Jokic's guy.
Max. Yeah. But Donovan's rumored to be wanting out anyway already.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you hire that coach, and 2 years in, things don't go well. I mean, Johnny Bryant has not head coached yet. So there's a huge risk there. And we know it can go one way or the other. It can go really bad or really good as a first year head coach. So you got to be really careful. But yeah, I agree with you that that's just something you don't do. Kenny Atkinson will be fireworks because I just don't think him and Donovan will work long term. Because Kenny's a fiery guy,
hard nose,
no messing around. He's gonna hold Donovan definitely accountable. So that's why that hiring would definitely be interesting. But I think Kenny's a good fit for a city and town like Cleveland, a smaller market.
He's a Mike Malone type. He's like a Mike Malone, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I agree. So that'll be interesting to see how that all works out. But Boston advance. All right, next one, New York and Indiana finished up. We had them at 2-2 last podcast. It was at 2-2, and Indiana get it done, pro. I mean, it's just interesting. The whole, I know Thibs is your guy, but man, they were running to the ground, man. They were picking up injuries left, right, and center. But by game 7, even if they got through to the next round against Boston, man, they would have had some G League guys shooting up at some point because they just some of it's bad luck. The Brunson breaking his hand on a swipe that you can't control, but then Josh Hart playing all those 48-minute games strains his abdominal. Mitchell Robinson goes out. So they had a lot of injury issues, but you got to give the Pacers credit too with the style of play that they play as well. It does run your legs up in a series, and it gets to game 7, and New York just had nothing left in the tank. They just looked absolutely Absolutely, Cook. They got destroyed in that game 7, 130-109. It wasn't really even that close, in my opinion, for most of the game. It looked a bit closer towards the end, or a bit more of a respectable score. Halliburton found some form in this series to an extent, with 21 and seven assists a night. Siakam with 20. Miles Turner, 48% from three in this series, Pro. New York were playing the drops position. Miles Turner really took advantage of that and hit some big threes. TJ McConnell, the quiet MVP of this series, just great energy off the bench. Annoying, niggly. He averaged 12.6 assists with a steal. Just made some key buckets for them when they were lacking energy and lacking grunt. And then for New York, Brunson 30 points a night. Not great clips, 46% from the field and 31 from the three. Assist to turnover wasn't great, 2-1, 6-2.5. But DiVincenzo for me was their best. He shot the piss out of the ball this series. 22 points a night, 45% from the field, but 46% from three. Really hit some big threes for them to keep them close in different stages of the game. And beyond that, they just ran out of gas and ran out of steam. And Indiana, steal the series, Pro.
Yeah, it's battle of attrition, right? I mean, especially if you're a team that's almost fully healthy. I think Mathurin was their only injury, for Indiana, and then the Knicks were just dealing with all those injuries. You can't have the injuries to your major crop of players, and just keep going down the list. It was just really tough for them to really stay in it. They didn't really have the numbers. And once you start advancing into the playoffs, you're going to really need those guys. And Indiana just stayed healthy. They just stayed with it. The Knicks fought them off as much as they could, forced them 7 games, which I don't know if a lot of people thought they could even go 7 with the amount of losses they had for players. But, without Bogdanovich, I mean, think about it, Anunoby, played, OG played, but, he played in that game 7, but after the third possession, he wasn't going to be able to do anything. So it was really tough. I mean, DiVincenzo was the player, like you said. Brunson, DiVincenzo did great. I think Hartenstein really, played himself into a major rotation player in the NBA. I think he had a great series. As good as TJ McConnell was for Indiana, I think Hartenstein really played out for New York, but for Indiana, man, they're fun to watch. They're not juggernauts, but they share the ball, they run, they're always attacking you. It doesn't matter. It's next man up mentality. They're really fun to watch. TJ McConnell was great. Halliburton, was up and down throughout the series. Siakam really carried him. Miles Turner was great. Like you said, 48% from three. But McConnell was great. Just getting to the paint pull-ups, getting to the basket, guarding, 94 feet. I think that sort of, that wore Brunson down a little bit. His full court defense, just sort of turning him a couple of times in the backcourt, not necessarily getting steals like that, but just wearing guys down. And I think that more people should be doing that in the NBA. And yeah, just Indiana just didn't have enough. And, too bad with the New York injuries, but that's just sort of what happens. And when we talk about Indiana later in the series, later in the program, they benefited twice from, lack of players with injuries in their series. Now they're sort of dealing with that right now, and they're in the conference final with Boston. So it was a hard fought series, but New York just didn't have the guns at the end of the day.
Yeah. And they play a shortened rotation. Look, if they were in a position with their acquisition, Bogdanovich, huge out for them. If they just had that one extra scoring punch, I think they win this series, even with the other injuries that happened, just because they were just lacking something off the bench. They had to go to Burks and different guys that hadn't played minutes. All of a sudden, they're thrown into the rotation, so it changed things up for them. But, I mean, New York grinded it out. I think a decent season for them. What they do with Randall moving forward is going to be interesting. They try to obviously move off that contract and get nothing back for it and just play with what they got. Maybe try to move, free up some cap space potentially. I don't know how you do that, but as Pro always says, you can move a vacuum cleaner with the max contract these days, which is true. So that would probably be their priority. I think just doesn't fit well in that squad. And there's been rumors with Towns and other different players with New York, so that'll be interesting to see how that goes. Indy move on. They go on to Boston, so that series is on right now. It's 3-0, but this series could be 2-1 for Indiana. Like it really, I think Indy with one of the biggest chokes of this year's playoffs was game one. It's a great teaching point. They had the ball with, I think it was mid 20 seconds left, up 3. Halliburton brings it over the line, so they basically need a foul. They're half trapping, and Halliburton falls over, turns the ball over. Boston come down, and I think they get up a bad shot or a turnover. Indiana get it back again, up 3 with 10 seconds left, and they don't get it in bounds. They throw it in. It gets deflected off Siakam, and he tries to save it, goes out of bounds, and they hit that big 3. And just some huge errors there by Indiana, where they had that game in the mix, and it just seemed like even with 2 to 3 minutes left, it seemed like they were trying to protect the lead rather than we're still got to win the game. They gave Boston a sniff, and you got to give Boston credit. That Jaylen Brown 3 was a tough 3. It goes in, and they go to overtime, and they win that game, which is unbelievable win for Boston to steal that. I think it's a completely different series, and then game 2's pretty much a formality for Boston, and then game 3 again. Halliburton's out with an injury with a hamstring. Indiana has full control of that game for the most part. You point to the first half, or at least I do, was that there was a huge momentum shift late in that first half where Indiana could have got it into the 20s, and Boston finishes, I think it was an 8-3 run, and it was only a 3 because I think Nembhard hit a tough 3 basically right before the half, but they hit a bad rotation by Indiana, give up an open 3 to, I think it was Jaylen Brown, then Drew Holiday picks someone's pocket in the backcourt, they get a layup out of it. Those kind of things make a huge difference, and that could have been a 20-point lead for them, but it's a shame that this one's 3-0 because it's much closer than that, and I really think that it could be 2-1 at the moment going into game 4, Pro.
Bogues, the NBA game, it just, you can never really let up. And you got to keep, even when you're down 20, you're down 15, you're down 18, those possessions are really important. If you put your head down and you feel bad for yourself, blah, 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 or you think that the other team's just going to quit on you and you let up, it could be problematic for sure. Boston sort of stayed with it, as hard as Indiana fought, and how good they are. And I just think the inexperience a little bit in the playoffs is a little bit of a different game, different energy as far as when you're playing. I think even though they have a couple of guys that went deep in the playoffs, sometimes you just lose your head. And I think that's what they did. And they just, like you said, that I think Carlisle said in the post-game press conference in game 1, he should have advanced it with the timeout, shouldn't even got to the 3-point shot at the end. And, a lot of times, his preference over the years have been not to foul on 3s. Everybody's got an opinion on that. Do you foul? Do you not foul? There wasn't really a chance to foul there. They didn't have that catch, put it on the floor. Brown just caught it in the corner. Good screening by Boston on the ATO, and just caught it, shot it in the corner, and they couldn't really foul because, they fouled. They probably would have got called for the shooting foul. So, yeah, it's one of those things, Bogues. It's, you think you have a lead, you think it's protected, you think that, you've been through the scenario a million times that you'd sort of see yourself through. But yeah, Indiana, you're right. Indiana probably should be up 2-1. Boston, like every series, man, they'll give you a game, they'll give you 2. They're not really that team that will just jam it down your throat 48 minutes for every game in a series. They sometimes play down a competition, and it's problematic. That game 3, you could have definitely scripted that, where, all right, Halliburton's out. They're just gonna grind it out. They're just gonna go hard, and they come right at Boston. That's what they did, and they just kept on making shot after shot after shot after shot. Boston was shell shocked. Finally, sort of got back in the game and ended up overtaking it. But man, I'll tell you what, like in the playoffs, you just can't you can't sleep on anything because no lead. There's too many with the 3-point shot and the style of play. There's just no lead that could really be, all right, we're up 10 with like 3 minutes to go. Like, so what? Up 15. We're up 20 in the second quarter, 20 in the third quarter, 18 after 3. There's still a chance to come back in the game. If you let them back in, with the 3-point shot, with pressure, with, getting to the rim, getting to the free throw line, with all the timeouts that happen, it could be problematic for you.
Yeah, it has been. It could be a wash of a series now. You're highly unlikely that Indiana get back in this. But you're right. Like Boston are most likely going to go to the finals, but they need to clean up just that. They just kind of float for periods of games and a series. I'll give you one. Cool, we'll get you back in Boston. Once you get to the finals, you can't afford to do that. So it's going to be interesting. And it seems like they have a real reliance on Jrue Holiday and Derek White, especially defensively, to just get them out of shit from time to time. And Tatum and Brown sometimes fall asleep defensively. Horford's solid, but getting older. And just like a lot of their big plays at defensive end, Holiday comes up with a huge steal late in Game 3. He's on those two guys, and they've been elite. And Tatum 31 a night in this series, and Brown, a very high scoring series, mind you. They've got 5 guys in averaging 31, 30, 19, 17, and 14. That's Horford, White, Holiday, Brown, and Tatum. And then Indiana, Siakam's been their best scorer so far, 24, 5 assists and 6 rebounds. And then Nembhard, Miles Turner, Halliburton, and McConnell, and Obi Toppin. But they need Halliburton healthy. It looks like he's probably going to be out again if it's a hamstring and they've rested him. I highly doubt he's going to be ready for Game 4, and this should be as close to a sweep. But it is Boston, Pro. Like you said, they could come back and lose Game 4 and just get an extra couple of tickets sold out there in Boston.
Yeah, I like you said. I don't really see that with Indiana. I think they'll put up a fight, no doubt. They might even be able to take a game. But even without Halliburton, because I could definitely see, especially at home crowd and them going, I read somewhere today. Did you see that where Carlisle was saying that he heard and NBA head coach? I've heard that. I'm privy to information. I heard that they're going to do a ceremony on our court if they win. That's a disrespectful to our players. That's a basically like a kick in the teeth to our players and fans. Well, I mean, I'm sure he's been in that situation before where he's gonna, he could clinch a series and there's gonna be, champagne and there's gonna be all this, ceremony at the arena. I don't understand that one, but I think that they could take a game for sure. I don't see them getting back in it. But Boston, look, you don't know about Porzingis. You don't even know if he does play, is he going to stay healthy based on that injury? And just sort of how hard the West is, as far as the 2 teams that are still available in the Western Conference, even though Minnesota's down 2-0, like they're in for a fight and a battle. And I think that, we'll talk about it later, but I think that champ's going to come out of the Western Conference. I truly believe that.
It's looking that way. As we move on to the West, we'll just finish off Dallas and OKC. I mean, Dallas just turned it on after the first 4 games, and they go to Game 5, 104-92, and they squeak out at 117-116, winning Game 6. A lot of chess piece moves in this series, most notably the Australian brethren. Josh Giddey kind of phased out of the rotation completely towards the end of this series. He averaged 12 minutes a night. Everyone points to the shooting. 18% from 3, but you hate to see it for guys to go through this in a series where they're kind of the outlier and the blame goes onto a certain guy. But with the amount of ball that's in SGA's hands, it just takes away from Giddey's strengths to have him on the floor with SGA, and they elected to go with more shooting, and it didn't look good for Giddey in that series as far as, I guess, his confidence. He looked like he was kind of just playing to not make a mistake at times. But I did like his comments. I don't know if you saw those, Pro, at the end of the season in his post season media, and just basically said, this is a great opportunity for me to learn and get better, and it's good that it's happening to me now at this point in my career, so I can fix what I need to fix and get back to the swing of things and be the player that I know I could be. So you love him taking the high road there and getting through all that. But SGA was great for them. He was pretty much season numbers 32, 8, and 7. Jalen Williams was 17 tonight. Chet Holmgren I thought he was going to be the piece that they needed to beat Dallas because he's a unique big where he can stretch the floor. Dallas don't have any stretch bigs really, but he shot at 22% from three, pro. I think that's what hurt him. I think you get him up to 35, 40. I think this potentially goes 7 games and OKC potentially have a better chance. That stretch five really needed to knock down some threes against Gafford and Lively, and they just couldn't do it on a consistent basis. Luka Doncic, 24, 10, and 9. Kyrie struggled a little bit in this series. Didn't shoot it that well, 44% from the field, better from three at 42, but just quietly went about 16 points a night. Their second leading scorer, in fact, was PJ Washington with 18 a night. So Kyrie kind of just flew under the radar, got it done when he bid shots when he needed to, but didn't have to do too much. But yeah, Dallas just once they kind of figured things out in this series, they had control of it, and OKC just couldn't get it done as the number 1 seed, pro.
Bogues, it's interesting as teams progress throughout the playoffs, they tend to sometimes figure something out that makes them really tough to match up against. And, I think with Kyrie not being as aggressive offensively, and then open it up for guys like PJ Washington and Jones and, other people, Josh Green, to sort of start scoring a little bit to take the load off of him and Luka a little bit. And I thought Kyrie was great in the series because he just sort of laid back, made plays when he needed to make them, moved the ball, didn't overly hold it. Luka did most of that, but PJ Washington really played well with them as far as, making corner shots. He was one of the more inconsistent players in the NBA in the last couple of years. And then he turned into one of the more consistent players in the NBA with his shot making, corner threes, playing hard defensively. Everything they couldn't get out of Williams, when they traded him out of town to Charlotte. And I thought that he played, he was the MVP for them because he really just gave them stability. And then elite shot blocking, rim protection, rim running, rim rolling with Lively and Gafford, and that size really, I thought they gave Oklahoma City some problems. Now on the Oklahoma City side, I think it's more an inexperienced thing. I thought that, Shea was great, averaging 32, mid-range game, getting to the elbow, getting to the basket, getting to the free throw line. Everything was really good there. Inconsistency out of Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren. Look, Holmgren shot at 37% from three throughout the year. He just, was really off. I think being in your first playoff, I don't care how good you are, being in your first playoff, situation, even though he played well in the first series, as you advance on, it's just more and more pressure, especially if you've never been there before. I think it's really a tough deal with the Giddey situation. It's all about shot making. And look, he made some progression this year, definitely working with Chip England, getting better with that. But, when you're shooting 18%, he didn't have a big minute, he didn't have a big leash with his minutes. But I think going forward for them and him, don't be surprised if they probably shop him for some trades, preferably to another team that could maybe get that other player, maybe to get some size to get, I thought offensive rebounding was a problem at times. It definitely was a problem in those later games, in game 6 for sure. Chet, and that's where Chet right now, physically, he's going to get better. He's going to get stronger. He's going to get more experience with that, but they definitely need to get a little bit bigger. Like I said, with Giddey's extension looming, in the next year or two, look for them maybe this summer to make a move, if not next year. But I think, in my opinion, you got Cason Wallace, who was a first-team All-Rookie. You got Isaiah Joe, who shut the hell out of it. You got other guys you could put in those positions for much cheaper. You can move them for some picks. You can, not that he'll get you a lot back, but I wouldn't be surprised if Giddey is moved in the next, 12 to 18 months.
Because he's up for extension, like his 4-year rookie contract is up at the end of this.
I think he's got but he has that mid-level opt-in, right?
Was it 25? Is it the offseason of 25?
I thought it was next season too. I thought it was. I'll double check Hoop's hype right now as we speak. But I believe he's contracted next year.
Yeah, he is for sure. They're not in a rush, but I'm saying
that's right.
And they're in a great situation salary cap wise, because they get off of Haywood, they get off of some players, but It'll be interesting what they do, going forward. They could keep him. I don't think it'll be a problem. Obviously, he fits in pretty well, but going forward, instead of, maybe to a team that you could move him for a veteran that's, not happy where he is. But the only problem with that as well is they don't really have a lot of other guys that they could throw in a trade that have money, so it'll be a little bit iffy making a deal. But I wouldn't be surprised, just sort of how they run there, as far as just sort of, rearranging the chairs, the deck chairs a little bit, keeping their main players in play, having their underpaid role players before they get extended, and then moving other players that, instead of paying Giddey $25 million a year, which I think sort of his position, anywhere from, I'd say, 18 to 22, 23 million, moving them, getting some picks, or getting a veteran that could especially beef up their front court. Although they could get a front court player cheap, but don't be surprised if he's moved in the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, well, he has the qualifying offer in 25, 26, and he's contracted next season. I know some Australian media were reporting that he's a free agent, he's going to leave. It's only leaving a trade point of view. And who knows, maybe he quietly wants out. Maybe he quietly says, you know what, I can see the writing on the wall here. I'm not asked to do anything late game. I'm taken out of games. This could continue. I might want out in greener pastures as well. You never know how that all works.
Or he could take it as, you know what, I need to work on A, B, and C this summer, and this is what I'm going to do. In the Olympics, this is what I gotta do these things in games. I got to get back on the court. I got to do this. This is my problem. This isn't, they're not fucking me. The organization's giving me a fair shot, but I got to be good enough to stay on the floor in playoff games. And what do I need to do that? Or maybe not. Or maybe it's the fucking circus of the NBA, and he just says, he listens to 2 or 3 people in his ear saying they fucked him. I think perimeter, his shot, his play creation, and some of the things he can do, off the charts. But his shooting is a major problem, especially if they're not making shots and he's there shooting 18%. Like that's got to be something that he continuously works on and gets better at, because that's going to be his thing.
Yeah, but even without that, let's say everything was kosher. I think OKC are putting the ball in SGA's hands. Like, it's as simple as that. So and even if Giddey was shooting it at mid-30s and being able to stay on the court, maybe he thinks, shit, this isn't my strength. I want the ball in my hands. I want mass usage, mass touches somewhere for 35, 40 a night. Maybe he wants that. Maybe because he's somewhat shown he could do it in glimpses previously, but that was when they were pretty bad, right? Like, they weren't a winning basketball team. So maybe in his mind, he's like, I want to go somewhere and be the starting point guard and play my 35 minutes.
But what about Luka and Kyrie and how that's working? They're both ball dominant guys. Obviously one guy dominates it, but the other guy gets enough.
They can both shoot threes. They can both shoot the three, though.
No doubt. But you just said it.
Yeah.
Right. But what you said in your last statement about, all right, so say he gets to it 35. What if he wants the ball in his hand? There's definitely enough possessions to get them both, touches. And I think for them to get to another level, I think that something has to click a little bit, maybe a little bit of a change. And I think that, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to be gone. But I think that you could co-survive with 2 players, but he's got to get better with the shooting. And that's going to take him shooting for the Boomers this summer, shooting threes. I don't know what they're going to have him do, but like, he can't just show up to training camp and like, all right, I'm ready to shoot. If he shoots like 1 3 a game in the Olympics, where that's probably going to be the only time he plays high level basketball all summer. So it's always an interesting deal with development, especially with the shooting, when it's that sensitive of a thing. So
yeah, I agree. It's just interesting, but just thinking out loud, like, I know that you're pointing around Kyrie and Luka. The other issue is Kyrie's been there, done that, and experienced that with LeBron, and has to be okay with it. Like you said, I don't know who's in Josh's ear. Maybe someone's saying you need to go get the keys to your own team somewhere. Maybe he thinks that's the way to go. You know how it goes in the NBA. Who knows who's in his ear, and that probably plays a big part as well. But it's going to be interesting to see where that all goes. But his comments, like I said, once again, towards the end of that season, at the end of the exit interviews, were that, he's motivated to get better and use this as a learning curve. So we'll watch that space and see, and hope he does well. And obviously now, going into the Australian Olympic campaign for the national team, he's going to have to knock a few of those down. Nuggets, Wolves, Pro. This is this is one of the swingiest series in recent memory. You look at these games, Minnesota going to Denver, they win the first two. They win the second one convincingly, 106-80, absolutely belt them. Denver then goes to Minnesota for the next two. They belt Minnesota in game 3, 117-90, and then they win one by 8 in game 4. Denver then go on to win 112-97 in game 5. Minnesota win game 6, 115-170, and then Minnesota win probably a pretty big game 7, 98-90. Denver up 17 in that one, pro, and they just got it done. I mean, Minnesota, Denver just, you don't often see them sputter that badly offensively, and they just couldn't get it done. I don't think Jokic, just not enough help. Edwards was awesome two ways. I mean, his defense on Murray for much of this series, I think, was very good. He's really solidified himself as a very, very one of the best two-way players in the NBA. Now, does he stay locked into that? We know how superstars go once those scoring numbers go up and the scoring usage goes up. They tone it down a little bit defensively and save their legs. But he was really good this series defensively, done a fantastic job. And Murray was pretty limited for most of this series. He finished with 18 a night, but 40% from the field, 33% from the field, from three, sorry, and didn't get to the free throw line. 1.7 attempts for the series, pro. So bad shooting clips there. Jokic was his usual self. Probably his 3-point shot deserted him this series, I think, pro, which probably was hurt them a little bit to get Rudy out of that pain and make him come out a bit more aggressively. Jokic was 29 a night with 11 rebounds and 8 assists, but 23% from three. So that definitely hurt them. Aaron Gordon, their third best scoring wise with 14, and Porter Jr. was pretty bad this series as well. 10 points a night. They just didn't get any other help from the others. And that was usually Murray. That 18 a night usually is 23, 24 a night. They win that series. They couldn't get it done. But credit to Minnesota. They grinded out a tough series, very swingy. Edwards 28 a night basically with 5 rebounds and 6 assists on decent clips, 50% and 38 from the three. Towns 18 and 9. He had a really good series. Created some mismatches. McDaniel's just been great all playoffs, in my opinion. He's been elite, 11 points a night. And Malone actually mentioned him. I don't know if you remember this, pro, leading into this series, that he was one of their biggest worries coming into this series. And people were kind of like, well, what do you mean? They got Towns, they got Edwards. And he's like, that's the guy that worries me the most. If he has an impact on games, we're going to struggle to win those games. And he was correct. Conley solid with 11. Naz Reid, decent in this series with 10 a night, and then Gobert with 10 and 10 a night, pro. But yeah, it was one of the most swingy series you've seen in a while, pro.
Yeah, I mean, nobody could really win a home game. Just really, really strange deal. And Minnesota, just what they, at the time, they just weren't intimidated at all. Edwards went at him. McDaniels went at him. I think Conley was a stabilizer there. Naz Reid was really good. And, Towns was, I thought Towns was very good. And that's the one thing that Towns is just not consistent enough for me. And he was consistent that series. They need because they don't really have a second scorer. Towns is it. After Edwards, you don't really have that second guy. Like Conley could chip in, Reed could chip in. They don't really have that flamethrower off the bench. They just have all these guys that sort of chip in. They grind you out. They play hard defensively. Edwards gives you like 30, and you got to rely on some shot making, some defense, and grinding things out. On the Denver side, I just thought Murray was just not consistent enough. He didn't give you enough, especially in those middle games where I think he had like 16 and then he had 10 the next night. For Denver, especially with a shortage of bench, we talked about it, in length throughout the season about, not having Bruce Brown, not having Green, and it really hurt them because their bench was short. It didn't have shot making. It didn't have that, that toughness that it had and experience it had the year before when they won the championship. Gordon got 5 shots in game 7. I mean, it just wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. And, like Jokic was great, but he just can't do it himself. He was tired at times. After the first couple of games, you could see he was exhausted, and they just didn't get enough. And Michael Porter Jr. just didn't give them the consistency they needed. He needs to be a guy that shoots 40, 42, 43 from 3, and that, like, you know how they play, Bogues. Everybody cuts off Jokic, and they move the ball, they come off dribble handoff, and they pass the ball, they make that extra look, and they grind you out defensively. They just didn't have that. And Gordon was great a couple of games, but then he was just inconsistent. So it's you just saw it coming after game one. Like, Minnesota was sort of like Mike Tyson back in his prime. He just had that eye of the tiger look, and they just jammed it down their throat. They just went at him. There's nothing that Denver really could do for it. They stayed in there. At times when it started swinging Denver's way, you're like, all right, Minnesota put up this great fight, but it's going to be Denver. And then they just laid an egg in the last game. So yeah, credit to Minnesota, man. They played ready. They were sharp. Edwards ended up, like you said, and as much as the crazy Michael Jordan comparisons, which I don't think anybody should ever be compared to, I thought he had a great series. He played hard, both ends of the floor. He did what needed to be done, but he was electric, and it was great to watch. And yeah, they ended up coming out of it.
Yeah, it was just just to see 40-point swings in a 7-game series, and then team bounce back. And I thought Denver had control of Game 7. They had control, and then Minnesota just, kind of knuckled down, and Denver couldn't get easy baskets or stops, and Minnesota kind of squeaked one out, which then leads us into the Minnesota-Dallas series, which is on right now at time of recording. So it'll probably end towards the end of this podcast. If it has a result, we'll obviously talk about it. But currently 2-0. Dallas is up in Game 3, but this has been interesting because I think Minnesota's had control of both of the first 2 games at least. They had control. There's a 7-point lead, I think, in Game 1, similar type lead in Game 2. Just couldn't hold on. But Wolves had numerous instances where their offense just went to absolute crap, and then they had to rely on getting stops after stop after stop. I mean, Edwards in the first 2 games, he's shooting 33%. And 36 from 3 for his 20 points. So that's not good enough. 8 rebounds, 7 assists is decent, but the shooting clip, he's like you said, him and Towns are probably the 2 most offensively gifted guys on that team. Naz Reid is their second best scorer so far in 2 games. He's been really good, but that also says you need more from Towns. Towns has to bring more. He's shooting at 27% in the first 2 games for his 15 points. Just not pretty by Minnesota, but I felt like they were in both games. Should easily be 1-1, potentially going back to Dallas. I mean, Dallas right now is up, I think, 4 or 5 in the middle of the third quarter. They win this to formality. It'll be probably 4-1, 4-2 at best. But good teaching point, I think, at the end of that game, Pro. Easier said than done guarding Luka, but the old adage for everyone listening out there is in the NBA, if you're the road team, you're down 2, you got the last possession. Generally, coaches have that adage of if you're down 2, you go for the win on the road because you don't want to go to overtime. If you're the home team, you go for 2 and you go to overtime because you got your home crowd and momentum. So that's generally how it's thought about. Every coach is different, but that's the old school mentality. I mean, you got to do a better job if you're Minnesota coming out of that timeout knowing that Luke is going to hunt switch Rudy, most likely. Should you have him on the floor at that point, Pro? I don't know, but they've been elite with him on the floor for the most of the season, so they probably don't want to move off that. But if they were going to go to a switch, maybe you question that and you go to a smaller lineup potentially. Rebounds can worry you, but if you're Rudy, you rewatch that film and look, Luka made him dance. There's no doubt about it, and that's what he does. He's going to try to make you move side to side, left and right. My thing is, if I'm stuck in that position, I don't move north-south. I move east-west, sideline to sideline at the point of attack of Luka, and I make him go by me. And he goes by me and shoots a pull-up, and we've still got a chance to get the win, call a timeout in advance because it's tied. Or it's tied, we go to overtime. You just cannot allow a 3. And I know people will say, well, Bogut, it's easier said than done. Luka's elite at what he does. But I'm going chest to chest with Luka as much as I can. And if he burns me completely and gets to the paint and shoots a pull-up, you live with that, right? And I think that's a great teaching point for coaches that listen to this, for people that coach semi-pros or pros, is You got to know time and score, and you got to make him not take that. He's going to try to take that three, and look, unbelievable shot. If it misses, I'm probably we'll have a different conversation. But I don't think you can allow a three in that spot, Pro. You have to make him get into the basket. And I think Minnesota, for the most part, did a pretty good job of trying to get Luka to shoot that mid-range and live and die by that, not let him take that three or get all the way to the cup. But you just got to control that late game situation better, Pro.
Yeah, sometimes that you're in the moment like that, you sort of lose your brain. It's interesting with the Rudy thing, because Rudy obviously he's taken a lot of hits over the last couple of years with being on the floor, and everybody's second guessing it. It's interesting that their defensive rating, and I'm not a big defensive rating guy, but I heard this today. His defensive rating with him on the floor versus not on the floor, it's a lot better when he's not on the floor. Yet their plus minus is off the charts with them on the floor. It's weird. I've never really heard of that before, but probably because of the lobs and what he could do offensively for them. But and I think that's sort of their problem too, Bogues. Like, I think Dallas forced him to be a decision maker when they were trying to get back in the games on those short rolls. Mm-hmm. And I just think, like, here's one thing that I would suggest to the law teams of every owner that's ever was affiliated with Rudy Gobert. I would take that assistant coach or assistant coaches that were working with him and sue him for malpractice. You're telling me this fucking guy for 13 years can't make a jump hook, can't barely make a free throw, has no post game at all. Not one fucking guy could teach him one fucking thing in the post. You've been in the league 13 years. It ain't Derek Lively who's been in the league like 9 months. That's malpractice. That guy, like, because you could tell, like, every time they give it to him, when if it's a lob or like when there's nothing at the rim and he just scores, great. But anytime he catches it with like 5 feet from the basket and he tries to do anything in the post, it's like 98% disaster. And that to me, I look at that glaring, and that's a big problem, because offensively, defensively, obviously we know what he does defensively, but offensively, it like he puts you in a harm's way. Like even Gafford, who's sort of a similar deal, like not a great offensive player, but he could catch it in the short roll, spin off you, score, do some things. Lively's a great decision maker out of short roll. But it's weird to me that the guy's been in the league that long. I'm not saying he should be Akeem Olajuwon, 88 moves, but like, can't make a fucking jump hook from 4 feet away. Like, what are we doing? What do you put down the fucking baguette in Paris for fucking a couple of months and just like learn a fucking jump hook? That to me, that last play, whatever. Like, I'm not a big X and O guy. What you should do, what you shouldn't do. I guess you man up the best you can to just, put him in the toughest situation you can. Put your hand up. Don't leave your feet. Try not to foul. Like you said, yeah, definitely force him. Guys get one of the best. He's Larry Bird like, he's Michael Jordan like, as far as being a like ice cold, like clutch player that can make any type of shot or get any type of shot off. You're right. You never want to put him in that situation where he can beat you, because Luka, anything inside of 48 feet he can make in any type of situation. He might miss 9 straight corner threes in a row, but when a game's on the line, when money's on the line, I'd bet on that guy right now more than almost any other player in the league. And yeah, you're right. You probably should have, you probably coming out of that timeout, you're like, look, dude, anything, we're going to give up anything but a 3, and we got to do anything we can to get him going to the basket, let him take a tough shot. Worst comes to worst, they tie it. But yeah, I mean, giving up the 3 is a big
you got
deal.
to, in that position, you just, you half blitz Luka with Rudy and McDaniel. I don't know why McDaniel's left. I mean, if they throw it to, I think it was Gafford or Lively. I think it might have been Lively. They throw it to him on a short roll, down 2, and he makes a play for a dunk. You can either foul him because he's not a great free throw shooter, or you give up a floating hook shot from one of those 2 guys. You're like, you live with that shit, right? It was just strange. I think Minnesota really kind of, they had a chance, and it just a simple 1-5 switch and leaving Rudy out there, which, the Clippers did it to him a couple of seasons ago. Luka's done it to him numerous times. Trent mentioned that he made the exact same move with the national team when Slovenia played France. Someone did the side-by-side for the game, and it was the same move. So you got to get, I think you either get out of his hands completely or you just don't switch it. You stay in a little blitz. But that's an X's and O's thing, and it's easier said than done. He's one of the best in the world at hunting switches and matchups that he wants. So you got to get the ball out of his. If Gafford makes that shot lively, go to overtime and they beat you, you shake their hand. But you just can't give up that three in that situation. But it's turned out to be a good series. I think right now it's a tied ball game going towards the end of the third quarter. Edwards has just dunked on Gafford. His athleticism is amazing. So it looks like hopefully, we get Minnesota to get a win, so this can be a series, because I don't want both sides of this conference finals be a wash.
Well, also let's not forget, Bogues, the most important thing with the Luka factor. Real Madrid just blew a 14-point lead in the EuroLeague finals to Panathinaikos. So I'm sure I might actually send him at halftime. I think I sent him a Rudy Gobert with the Panathinaikos flag. So he'll probably score like 40 in the second half. So I think we'll be all right.
Well, there you go. But yeah, that's a playoffs. We'll see. It's looking, every bettor would say it's going to be Dallas, Boston. Stranger things have happened, but we'll watch that space. In a couple of weeks, we'll have our finals preview. Some news, not a whole lot of news this week, Pro, but I guess the talk for everyone was the Draymond on Shaquille O'Neal's podcast. People were adding me because there was the Warriors-Lakers debate. Who would win, the Warriors when I was there, or Shaq's Lakers, and people were like, "Oh, Shaq said he got." It's like these debates are so pointless to me. I hate era debates just because there's so much shit that changes. There's rule changes. There's the game's refereed differently. You've got, even if you go further back eras, there's equipment changes. There's, they were traveling there's so much shit, man. There's obviously an emphasis on three balls and bigs that can shoot today. Back then, you weren't even allowed out of the paint if you were a big. There's so much that goes on. You'll just rack your brain trying to figure these things out. Who will figure these things out? They will. A friend of mine said that they'll be able to simulate these games with AI in another little while and get a pretty close result to what it might have been like. But I know we've spoken about it before, but just comparing eras, and this team would have beat that team, and that it's clickbait as you can get. It gets people talking. I get it, but I just don't. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, I mean, I never partake in it. Now, one thing I will partake in, because he did say that he wouldn't let Shaq catch the ball, which is, come on, give me a fucking break. Shaq is back when Shaq was playing. They had some of the best defensive players in the league front him, and all they would do, they would have a call out a triangle where they fronted him and they just reversed the ball and fucking gave it to him and scored inside. That one thing I would say that he's completely full of shit on. There's no way that you're going to stop Shaq from catching the ball. Anything else I can care less about. I hate these debates. I don't partake in them. I think they're useless. They're clickbait, like you said. But Draymond's going to try to get in the news every week. He's like Gilbert Arenas. There's always a take that he has that, demands thousands of people's attention. So, it's good, bad, and different, however you want to feel about it. But he's gonna, especially protecting his own self, his own team, whatever. He's gonna go at anybody. So, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, just the debate is the debate. I just think they're pointless. So when people the Wilt versus Shaq and the eras and Bill Rudd, it's different style of play. The Warriors style of play would have been frowned upon early 2000s. The Lakers style of play is frowned upon today. You got all that shit to who we refereeing, can you intentional foul? There's all that kind of stuff. So I think they're just silly debates in my opinion. But the thing that I laughed about Draymond was that we both had a chuckle about was Draymond said the league's trying to make guys go broke.
Jesus Christ.
Broke with the amount they're finding. And you're like, I'm not great at math, Pro, but when you're making $40 million a year and you get a $50K fine every now and then, or maybe you miss a game and you lose $200,000-$300,000 from your own doing, I think he's going to be okay. But he was serious.
Of course.
He was serious about it. So I got to get my guy Draymond. Like, I don't think it's still your doing. Yes, some of and they went on to discuss like the heat pack thing, and Draymond said if that was me that threw it, I would have been suspended for the whole year. And I agree somewhat. No, he wouldn't have been suspended for the whole year, but I agree that there is a difference in how they adjudicate these fines to different people. There definitely is. And that's also your doing,
they admit
right?
that.
Yeah, that's also your doing. That's because you have a track record and a rap sheet that they'll say you got a scrapbook of indiscretions. We're going to go hard on you because you're not learning your lesson. And that's not. Is that right? Should every indiscretion or fight or technical foul be handled on its merit by itself? In an ideal world, but that's not how it works. The criminal system's the same. It's like, if you've got your benefit of doubt goes down with each indiscretion. But to say the league trying to make guys go broke, as a guy who actually I was unfairly suspended, still a claim pro. For my one NBA game, I got suspended, and then I looked at what the fine was. It was like $260,000. I was like, it does hurt, but it was my doing. I swung an elbow and accidentally connected with someone's chin and got suspended for a game, right? But I just felt it was funny that he's like, the league's putting, it's almost like it's a strategic ploy to make guys go broke.
Bogues, NBA players with their money are complete morons for the most part. They're financially illiterate.
Tell us what you really think.
Yeah, you have 700 people telling you what to do. Even though the league has a bunch of jokesters coming in and talk to you, like guys who blew hundreds of millions of dollars or $40 million and telling you about financial responsibility. It's like me giving you fucking nutritional advice. But like, you've got so many tools at your advantage, disposal, right? Like, if you have people who protect your money, you have people that can audit your financial people that the NBA, I think once or twice a year, the NBA will pay for it. You'll have
to audit your financial advisor.
Yeah, audit your financial advisor. Yep. They've got all these people screaming at the top of their lungs about people losing their money, and it's got nothing to do with it. The NBA, there is some circus deals with it, but they do have 1 million people that work in this to try to, promote the player, promote the ex-player, try to help them in 1 million different ways. And they continuously spend their money on dumb shit. They continuously, they don't know how to manage it. You've got a bunch of people like Jamal Mashburn, Nazi Muhammad, that start businesses that save their money. It doesn't spend it on stupid shit. And they have this wealth and they keep it for years and years and years. But you've got so many people in the league that they just don't know what to do. They listen to 1 million people. They all rob and blind, and they're the last one to know, even though there's 1 million people trying to tell them, hey, you got to watch out. I've had so many stories about, NBA players giving power of attorney to some fucking street guy that's going to handle their money. And the only 2 pieces of his financial advice they probably gave him is buy pumpkins and sell them on October 30th and buy Christmas trees and sell them on fucking December 24th. I mean, it's just, it's mind boggling to me. I had guys in Boston that were paying their AAU coach $10,000 a month to pay their bills. So literally I'm just writing out a check to the gas company, your mortgage, and somewhere else out of your fucking checking account. I'm getting 10 grand. Sign me the fuck up for that. But also on the other end with the fine stuff, like you and we got a difference of opinion. I think that it should be a small percentage of pay versus just a cookie cutter fine for doing a specific thing. Because now, like a guy who's making 400 grand gets hit a lot harder than a guy who's making 12 million. That's me. I'm not saying that it should be done that way, but like, there's no way the NBA has against NBA players to make money. They've taken so many shots with all these players blowing hundreds of millions of dollars in bad press. There's no way that they want those guys to go broke. That's just again, another hot take, another victim moment, another look at me, and. Let's get some clickbait going, because that's a ridiculous statement, a ridiculous argument.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I just don't think it's right. As Draymond been like I said, has he been hard done by sometimes as a guy that was part of that finals team where he got suspended? Yeah, he has, but that's also because there's a scrapbook. So, but yeah, as far as I think he was,
that's crazy.
Trying to obviously be a bit more pointed with it and go out the league saying that but to a strategy to make you go broke. No, I don't agree with that. Caitlin Clark stuff has come up again. And Charles Barkley's comments, I think, were pretty key, pretty spot on. He just basically called a lot of the other WNBA players petty. There's a lot to unpack here, Pro. I feel like there's some definite, I wouldn't call it discrimination, but I don't think it's like that. I don't think she's what WNBA players feel should be a WNBA player, like kind of clean-cut white girl. I think traditional family values, from what I understand, WNBA's generally a LGBT-heavy league. I think that plays a part in all of this. No matter what people say, I think it definitely does. Whereas there's a bit of jealousy there. There's also jealousy the fact that it's a rookie coming in, hasn't really even played a game or established herself in the WNBA, but he's getting all this attention and notoriety. But you got to look at it from a point of view of like, this is helping you. It's helping your league. You've got chartered flights now. You've got the standard of everything's going up because of her, and she's a big part of it. To be jealous of that whilst you're part of the platform going up, to me, Pro, is crazy. And Barkley's comments stem from a lot of girls kind of going at her, making snide comments to the media and social media, and there's an obvious jealousy. And Barkley also, said that there's no one more petty than males when it comes to this stuff. I would put a little caveat in that. I think males for the most part aren't as petty until you get to athletes. I think all athletes are petty when it comes to this kind of stuff, where there's rivalries in locker rooms, there's rivalries positionally. I think I'm better than that guy. Then it becomes a jealousy battle. That's somewhat par for course with professional athletes in team sports, because you need to be part of a team. That's why it makes it such an interesting dynamic. But you also need to be competing with a guy that's in your position. I want to take your minutes and all that kind of stuff. So just been interested in watching it, Pro, and I think the WNBA light is shining brighter and brighter with the Caitlin Clark. But I just find it so interesting that she's getting so much pushback from players in her own league.
Yeah, I think the best way to do it here is just to keep it moving. Like, if you don't like her, you don't have to like her. You don't have to celebrate her. You don't have to do any of that. Just keep it moving. But when people want to take shots like that, it's an interesting deal with the whole. Look, I think that there's such a delusional aspect to this from WNBA players' perspectives about, the pay gap, and they're frustrated about the money they make. They got to play year round, but they just don't understand. They don't generate the revenue, and she's helping. I think chartered flights are a fucking joke for them right now. No offense. Like, yeah, they should fly. They should fly charter, but it's costing them $25 million extra a year to do so. Where, look, you're complaining about salaries and stuff. You could put that money towards, they obviously raised the money that you could put it towards your BRI or what have you, but now you're throwing 25 million more out. Let's forget about that. The Caitlin Clark thing itself, I think it's a big time jealousy. I think that, I think they think that the league is about 20 years ahead of where it really is. Like I said, they're probably where the NBA was in the 1950s and 60s with salary and sort of fans that come into the games and sort of like people's interest. I think that Caitlin Clark definitely puts eyes. It sells merchandise. It sells tickets. It puts media people. The media companies want to invest more in their sport just because of that. And for somebody just to continuously cut her off at the knees, look, she should be celebrated this early. Yeah, I mean, look, but what happened with LeBron James, and I saw that with Yao Ming. There's a lot of jealousy with Yao Ming coming in because it's just there was such a big, a big deal put with him, and there was such a big deal with LeBron coming in and, a couple other people past that. But I think it's pettiness, it's jealousy. You just got to look past it, because it's going to take a lot more than Caitlin Clark to get them where they want to get to salary wise. But she's a hell of a starting point. And she's not perfect. She's going to take her lumps and things. But if she's helping your league like this, you gotta be like, all right, I may not like her, but you know what? Let me just do the whole bullshit. Oh, it's great. All glory to God. She's awesome. Blah, blah, blah. Like any other cliche you want to insert there that pro athletes use, but just keep it moving. You don't have to be you don't have to have a picture of her, in your locker, for God's sakes, and praying to her every day. It is what it is. They're jealous because they're not making much money and she's making millions of dollars, and they got to play through their first rookie shitty deal, and they got to get to their $200,000 or $150,000. She's making 75, but she also is probably making about, I don't know, $6 million, $7 million a year for her Nike deal and other deals. So there's a big time jealousy there. It's pettiness, but you just got to, just worry about you and move forward. And if this is where you want your league to be, you want to compete with the guys and all that stuff, as delusional as that is, you gotta continue to move the needle. And what they were doing, look, I like that basketball. I've said it a million times in the podcast, but they're not earning the money. They're not putting that money in the BRI where they could make more money. They could fly charter. I mean, without going to the hole. There's $75 million in the hole in the next 3 years, 25 a year with this charter plane thing. Where do you think this fucking money's going to come? Do you think it just fucking grows on trees? You're going to print more of it? Well, we'll probably print more of it, but that's for another talk show, I guess. But it's just crazy, man.
No, it is. And the point of Barkley's comments is you got your own people in your own league shitting on you because you're a brand within itself, and they probably feel like, well, you haven't earned that yet in our league. We're going to bat you down a little bit, but you're like, it's bringing you all up together. This is the thing. Yeah. It's like, we know that playing in the NBA, your LeBrons, your Jordans, your Kobes, you can be jealous of how good they are and be like, okay, if they're really good, man, wow, I wish I could be like that. But you're earning as a mid-level player $20 million because they're earning the 50 and the 60 as the max. It all trickles down eventually, right? And it's just a shame to see. But I think there's a lot more causes than just the fact that she's a rookie doing well early. I think there's a lot of social issues that come into play in that league, which is it's just sad to see and sad to see in today's day and age. You see Lonzo Ball, pro. A meniscus transplant.
Meniscus?
That is that a first? Is that?
I've never heard of it. Trent, what have you heard of it?
Never heard of it, but let me do some research.
That's got to be a first. I think to come back and play, I'm sure guys have had meniscus transplants before, but to actually come back and play NBA level basketball on a meniscus transplant, just even saying that, I don't know too much about it because I don't know anyone that's had it. Just doesn't sound good to come back and play a high level game. I wish him all the best. And I think he's a phenomenal player and can really make a difference for that team. But yeah, coming off a meniscus transplant, pro, I'm not too sure.
Bogues, you see all these players with really bad knee injuries at the end of their careers, and them doing the platelet, the whole platelet sort of Germany deal, and now they're doing it in Mexico. It never really takes, right? All these I don't know. All these laboratory deals where not really approved, not approved by any true doctor in the United States deal, all these Hail Marys really, a lot of them don't stick, but you know how players are, especially later in your career. Well, he's not really late in his career, but he's late down the line with all these injuries he's had, especially to that knee not getting better. It's just, yeah, I mean, he's got to try anything. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I can't really speak on it. Hopefully it does work. He's, he was a good player. It just, man, he hasn't played in forever though. I think it's going to be a long shot, but again, I don't have any educational background to sort of go for or against it.
So basically, no NBA player has undergone a cartilage transplant and returned to the court. So that was the procedure he had prior to the meniscus transplant.
Yeah.
So let alone the meniscus, like a procedure he's already had on that knee, no NBA player has returned to the court. in NBA basketball.
Not looking good. And then your body taking it in to high impact and load, how it reacts to that. If you have swelling issues or your body just saying, no, this isn't, it's not good.
Like with the platelet thing, it just seemed like everybody's great in drills, like after they get it done and they're running and doing this and doing that. But once they start taking contact and cutting and doing the stop and go and all that, it usually goes to shit. I've been around a lot of people that have had that done, and it really doesn't really take, it takes for a little bit, but again, once that contact and just regular contact comes, it's a tough road.
Yeah, and just the grind of the NBA, the flights, the on your feet a lot. It definitely makes it's easy to do a 1-on-0 drill to show you're healthy, which many players have done when they've recovered from these kind of injuries. But it's game 65 on a cold night in the Midwest or wherever you are. That's when your knee starts to really feel it. And just finally, the Giddey investigation is over, both from the point of view of the law and the NBA. So time to move on from that. He was found not guilty on all fronts criminally. And then the NBA has closed the investigation pending that he did nothing wrong, which was interesting. It was just a quiet one they put out. We won't get into that one. All right, stats, useful or useless, bro. Only 4 centers in NBA playoff history have made 7 threes in a game. 2 of them did it in back-to-back days, pro. They were. Well,
obviously, Naz Reid was one of them.
Yep.
Let me see. Porzingis. Drawing a blank on the second one, Bogues. Who the hell did it?
Al Horford.
Oh, Al Horford. I always think of him as
your Boston guy.
Yeah.
Who are the other 2, pro? Who are the other 2?
Shit, centers?
Yep, I'll give you a clue. Game 4, 2024 first round in the East, and Game 5, 2020 first round in the West.
2020 in the West. Hold on. I'm just going to go. I'm not looking it up, folks. Just let me get
I'm not looking it up. I'm just going to Google it real quick.
No. I got my database
That's
of just
bigs
like
that shoot
centers.
threes. Yeah, there's not a whole lot.
No. Hold on. Let me see. I mean, for West, I would say Jokic, but just let me.
Jokic is right. Game 5 versus Utah in 2020.
I would think Joel Embiid.
No, not Joel Embiid. Miles Turner. Game 4, 2024 versus Milwaukee. So just last month. But yeah, only 4 centers in NBA history have made 7 threes in a playoff game.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously you can rule out anything before 2000 because no centers shot threes, but still pretty impressive. Last one this week. LeBron James has more all NBA selections than the Pacers, Timberwolves, Magic, Clippers, Cavaliers, Heat, Mavericks, Nuggets, and Trailblazers.
Jeez.
Useful or useless?
I think it's pretty damn useful. Jeez, that's crazy.
There was a lot of interesting stats out of this All-NBA as well. He's also the oldest and youngest player to ever receive one.
Yeah.
And then Luka has, I think, 5 All-NBA selections, which is more than Curry, Dirk, and a long list of very, very good players. Like, Luka already has more
than Curry?
More than Stephen Curry.
Really?
Yeah, I'll pull it up right now.
Steph's only had 5?
He has more what?
I think 4, and Luka has 5.
All NBA first, you mean?
All NBA.
I think first.
Well, he was hurt.
First. No, first. I thought he just meant all NBA in general because I know Steph's had more than. Okay, that makes sense if it's first teams.
So here we go. Yeah, first, sorry, my apologies. More selections than Stephen Curry, Dirk Nowitzki, Kevin Garnett, Moses Malone, and John Havlicek, and he is 25 years old.
Wow. Yeah, he'll have the most. What's the most, LeBron?
LeBron with 20 now.
For all NBA first?
Oh, no, not
first.
Sorry.
Yeah, first would be interesting.
All NBA. He's getting to the point now where he's like second team, third team, and going from there. But yeah.
Yeah. I wonder who's the leader in all NBA first team selections. It's got to be LeBron, Kobe, LeBron.
I would say LeBron, Kobe,
MJ.
Kareem, maybe.
MJ, maybe.
Karl Malone and Kobe Bryant were both selected to 11
Oh, wow.
All NBA first teams.
Karl Malone, yeah.
Oh, sorry, LeBron is the leader with 13.
13, yeah.
13,
LeBron's gonna be up
and then
there.
Kobe and Karl have 11. Kareem and Tim, Bob Cousy, Jerry West, Michael Jordan, Bob Pettit, and Elgin Baylor all have 10.
Wow. Interesting. But yeah, just the domination of LeBron and those teams just not having as many All NBA selections, I guess, which is interesting. NBL, Jordan Crawford re-signed with Tasmania Jack Jumpers. Good signing for them. Jack White is back to Melbourne United. Great for the league. Hate to see it that he's gone to Melbourne, but that was a team that he's been with. Very, very good player. Will be up there in potential, all NBL first, second team, maybe even MVP. We'll see how he goes with that newfound confidence coming from the US. And Modi Moa is gone, pro. So I don't know if you know who that is, but he's the head coach of the New Zealand Breakers. Very passionate. Coached the New Zealand Breakers the last couple of seasons. From what I understand, tough time for him to go because free agency is just basically close to finished, but all the big names have gone. They've structured their team. They're probably preparing for camp in the next couple of months, which will start probably August-ish. And they're without a coach, the worst possible position to be in because now you got June, July to hurry up and find a coach and then visas and all that kind of shit. So you feel for New Zealand there, but got offered an absolute boatload of money from what I understand in Japan, more than any NBL team got offered. So money talks. The Japanese league continues to throw briefcases at numerous talent from the NBL, which does hurt our league a little bit, but that's cost of doing business. And from what I understand, that Japanese league just continues to grow and grow and grow. So that's great for the game, but the NBL is definitely weary of it. NBL Hoop Fest has been announced to be in Perth, which will have, junior events, NBL games, WNBL games, kind of for AFL and NRL fans, it's kind of the gather round, or where you play all your games in one city and try to promote the game that way. So it's a good thing for the game. See how it goes in Perth. Perth are pretty basketball mad, but only for the Wildcats. So I'd imagine those other games might not have that many bums on seats, but we'll see how it goes. It's a good initiative to try and see how it goes. And some rumors that the NBL is involved in the purchase effort of the WNBL, which I think will happen over the next potentially couple of weeks. Basketball Australia is going to sell the majority, from what I understand, of the WNBL. They're going to keep a portion of it. Not sure how much they were trying to keep, but it's been rumored from anywhere from 10, 15% to 30% of stake in that league. But I'm hearing the NBL is the front runner, and I know Larry's had kind of that in his plan for 5 or 6 years to try and basically own everything basketball in Australia league-wise. So I think the NBL's obviously done a good job with the way they've done things the last 5 or 10 years of getting the NBL out of the basement into the mainstream again, people talking about it, and they're trying to do that with the WNBL as well, because the WNBL does need some help. It is not in the best spot it has been, especially financially at times. And there is some government money there available. So we'll see. We'll watch that space. Pro, fact or fake news?
Bogues, with Denver losing, their title window is basically closed. Fact or fake news?
Let me just check. I know they're kind of hamstrung salary wise, right?
So right now
they're pretty screwed. That's why they couldn't keep Brown, right?
My numbers have them at 172 million. Could be off, but next year go to 184 million. So they are strapped. They're probably in that second apron where you can't really do sign and trades and you can't do a lot, with all that. So look, they're getting older. That bench isn't very good. You can make some adjustments to the bench, of course, but with the West being as good as they are right now, with the emergence of Oklahoma City, Minnesota, Dallas, the Clippers are going to probably, if they re-sign Paul George, they'll stay with that. So, you get those four guys right there, with that roster getting a little older. What's your take on it?
I'll still say fake news. I still think they're in the mix for the next year or two. I don't think they're out, their window's closed. I think they've got a glaring issue that their bench needs to improve. Does Braun, is it Braun or Brown? They pronounce it Brown, right?
I'm pretty sure.
I think it's Brown.
Yeah. Always mess that one up. But yeah, he's going to make a bigger jump, I think, again. They need him to be better for them off the bench, but they don't really have any other young pieces that they can lean on that bench. Peyton Watson.
He's good. Watson's good, but he's sort of like Dorian Finney-Smith a little bit. He just can't shoot right now.
Yeah. So it's going to take one of these young guys having a great summer, coming back and saying, holy shit, he's really improved, for them to keep that window open, I think, because their bench was glaringly bad. But But, you still got Jokic, Murray, and Porter. That's your big three. Gordon is a great role player with them, and I think KCP didn't have a great playoffs, but can be better if he has a good off season. He has a player option, so he might I don't know if he opts out after that playoff performance, but maybe he does. Who knows? Clash client, so probably could get 40 somewhere else. But yeah, I think their window's still open, Pro. I don't think it's shut. If you ask me this in 2 years, I think it would be.
Yeah, I tend to agree. What's glaring for them is, they're top two with Murray, with Jokic and Murray right there. You got a great coach. You got good things going right there. But with Porter, 33 this year, 36 next year, 38 the year after that, and no option, just straight 40.8 in 26-27. So, see, I don't see anybody really unloading for him and saying, look, I'll give you. That's the thing. Like, what can you get for I always look at it that way, Bogues. Like the championship level teams, they keep their 1 and 2 together. Maybe they keep their third together, and everyone else they sort of keep. Every couple of years they tend to trade, try to get something a little bit younger, good player. Continue to move forward. Question is, can you do that with Gordon and Porter? I don't know. I tend to say that it is fake news. I wouldn't say that it's over. But I don't see a pathway out of this thing of a little bit of mediocrity where these other teams are, like Oklahoma City being where they are, the emergence of Dallas, the emergence of Minnesota, those three teams alone. And let's not forget about I'm not saying Phoenix is any good, but like Phoenix there, you don't know what San Antonio is going to do in the next couple of years with, if they make some moves to get some players to put around Victor. So it'll be, not that they're going to be a championship level team, but all these teams are getting better. And I just don't see where they get better. And even Brown and some of their guys off the bench, I don't see. Like Watson's definitely got to address the shooting. Reggie Jackson's getting older. Zeke Najee's okay. DeAndre Jordan's on his way out. I guess you could always get like a journeyman.
That's what they're going to
mid-level is really
the mid-level or the vet min guy that's being bought out.
But on that second apron, Bogues, and Trent could back me up with some numbers. That second apron mid-level exception might be like $3 million bucks.
Yeah, and it might be it'd be 3x that though, then won't it? It'll hit him harder on the cap, right?
Yeah, but like most of these other guys that are like in the middle with their spending, say like Dallas or something like that, they spend a lot. Like a mid-level team spending, say Washington, like they'll have their full mid-level exception, which
available,
is at like 9.5, 9.8 million a year. So when you're a second apron team, it's like $3 million bucks. You can't sign and trade anybody. You're really handcuffed to what you are. Look, they're still a really good team. It's
they're
just
still top
their
four.
bench.
They're still top four. Like you got Minnesota, OKC, and probably Dallas now. I'd rather be Denver than the Clippers. I'd rather be Denver than Phoenix. I'd rather be New Orleans Pelicans. I'd rather be Denver. Lakers, Kings, Warriors. I'd rather be Denver. So. Houston's one that might sneak in there eventually if they make some moves and they get another year under their belt. They started to play some good basketball towards the end there. Spurs probably a year or two away from at least being, scratching the surface of getting out of a play-in. But I'd still rather be Denver than 80% of the West, right? So, but yeah, I'll go fake news.
Yeah, I'll go fake news. It just, I agree. They will compete for a championship for a few more years. Are you good enough to turn that corner? I'll give it another year before I probably make an opinion, but it is close. And the last one, Bogues, with the emergence of what Luke is doing in the playoffs, would you say that if you had to rank him, he's ranked ahead of Jokic or Jokic ahead of Luka right now?
As far as
fact or fake news, right now, Luka has more. I know it's like, I know it's grasping at straws here. They're both great players, but if you had to rank them and you had to start a team today, Luka would be ahead of Jokic or Jokic would be ahead of Luka?
Well, the age thing plays. Luka's 25, much younger, but as far as I would still give it to Jokic today based on the championship that he's won. So Luka, they win it this season. I think Luka surpasses him. But if they're both young, I mean, Luka's impact immediately was greater than Jokic's. It took Jokic a couple of years, more than a couple of years, to get to where he is. You taking Luka just because you're gonna get 15 years of this at an elite level. Like he hasn't kind of slowly phased into his NBA career as a young guy. He's kind of jumped in, taking it with two hands. Jokic took some time, so I'd probably go Luka as far as that goes. But as far as talking about legacy and all that kind of stuff right now, I think that just people will play that championship as a big part of Jokic, and I think that like I said from the start of the season, I think Luka should have been in the MVP running a bit closer than he was. Yeah. I think he was definitely underappreciated.
Like if you're voting All NBA this year, like basically playoff 2. If you're voting that
with playoffs, I'd probably have Luka above him. If it was out of those two for a spot, I'd have Luka above him this season. If you could include the playoffs,
yeah,
it's tough. It's tough. It's like you said. It
is tough, man. It is tough.
Classman of
I'll
straws,
take Luka.
Yeah,
I'll take Luka over Jokic. Age would come into it, but just handling the ball, I think a guard right now is more valuable than the big. Look, and I'm a huge Jokic fan. It's not like it, and I think it's really, really close.
I think your team matters too, bro. Like I think clean slate. Yeah, yes, I agree with you, but I think the roster that so say you have a pick, it depends what you have around you. So if you have, if you have the opportunity to take Jokic and you got cutting, slashing, 3-point shooting, yes. If you've got around Luka, you've got guys that can't shoot the three as well. You got more athletic guys. You know what I mean? Like that definitely plays a part as well. So as this game has 3 minutes left, Dallas up 2 points, 107-105. I think Dallas just turned it over. This will finish as we get offline, pro. But I agree with you. I'll probably take Jokic, but I think as far as legacy goes, I'll take Doncic. But as far as legacy goes today, I think Jokic is ahead.
Yeah. And I think that the two conference finals that Luka, like when players don't win a championship and you're comparing them to a player that's won a championship, I think if you go to the conference finals multiple times and you're the best player on that on that conference finalist teams, that does weigh in a little bit too. Like if he's a guy that like kept on losing in the first or second round, if you like Chris Paul'd it, didn't make the conference final, didn't make final. I could say that, and Luka hasn't made a final yet, not yet anyway. But it's just interesting. I talk to my friends about it. I talk to basketball people about it, and just say, hey, who would you rather? And years past, Jokic in a landslide, as one would think. But this year has been like if I've asked 15 people, it's like 8-7, one way or another. So that's why I wanted to get your take on it.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Coin flip. All right. We'll see you next week. Enjoy the rest of the game.
All right, Bogues. See you guys in a couple of weeks.